After LASIK, my brother sneered, "Your new look won't fool anyone." My comeback hit hard when I revealed his jealous sabotage and forced him to admit why he needed me to stay small. I'm 31 now, but for most of my life I played the role everyone quietly assigned me. The quiet sister. The one who didn't cause trouble, didn't demand attention, didn't glow the way my younger brother Zach did. He's 28, handsome, athletic, the golden boy who could trip over his own feet and somehow land on a compliment. My parents, Marlene and Dan, never said it outright, but they didn't have to. "Zach doesn't complicate our lives," they would say, usually right after sighing at me for something trivial. I studied hard, worked part-time jobs, kept the house running when they were busy. But during family gatherings, they talked about me like I was a long-term project. "Emma's buried in books again. Emma never wears makeup. Emma needs to loosen up." Meanwhile, Zach brought home C's and got rewarded with new sports gear. I won an academic competition and got a quick good job, followed by 20 minutes discussing his weekend plans. By high school, he'd graduated from being the favorite to being the family comedian, and I was his easiest target. One Thanksgiving, in front of 20 relatives, he smirked and said, "You look like someone hired you to scare the guests." The room erupted in laughter, and I stood there, smiling politely, realizing that in their eyes my purpose wasn't to be seen. It was to stay conveniently in his shadow. Change didn't hit me like lightning. It arrived quietly, a series of practical decisions that somehow rearranged my entire existence. It started with LASIK. My company insurance covered 70%, and for the first time in 20 years I saw my face without the thick frames everyone had used to define me. I remember staring at the mirror afterward, blinking, trying to decide if I looked strange or simply undiscovered. My reflection didn't feel like a stranger, more like a version of me that had been patiently waiting her turn. A month later came the promotion, senior accountant for a tech firm in Austin. Not glamorous, not Hollywood-level exciting, but it felt like my life was finally moving under its own momentum instead of dragging behind Zach's. With my raise, I did something reckless by my family's standards. I invested in myself. New clothes that actually fit my shape instead of hiding it. Good shoes. Proper skincare routine. And, the boldest choice of all, I booked a session at one of the best salons in downtown Austin. My stylist, a woman with sharp eyeliner and a sharper sense of humor, lifted my old bangs with a comb and said, "You have beautiful cheekbones. Why are you keeping them imprisoned?" 3 hours later, I walked out with a cut and color so striking I almost didn't recognize myself in the salon window. For the first time, I didn't just look presentable. I felt beautiful, and the world reacted. Colleagues who'd barely noticed me before suddenly invited me to lunch. Women I worked with started asking where I shopped. Men held doors, lingered a little longer in conversations, found excuses to chat by my desk. I got asked out more than once, which still felt surreal. I wasn't used to being visible, but I was learning to enjoy it. I changed how I walked, how I spoke, how I held myself in rooms. Not louder, just clearer. I stopped shrinking. I even started attending company happy hours instead of inventing reasons to stay home. Life finally felt like something I was allowed to participate in, not watch from the bleachers while my brother dribbled a metaphorical football. And my family knew none of it. I didn't avoid them, I just didn't offer updates. When they called, I kept the camera off. "We miss seeing your face," Mom would say. "Oh, I'm just tired," I'd answer. Truth was, I wanted an entrance. A dramatic, satisfying reveal after decades of being the quiet one. The perfect opportunity was Zach's upcoming wedding to his fiancée, Madison, a nurse from Dallas. Honestly, I liked her more than I liked most of my relatives. She seemed sweet, cheerful, eager to organize things. Her voice alone radiated optimism. The kind of optimism you only have before you meet the full Hamilton family dynamic. The wedding was 2 months away. My plan was simple. Show up looking like the updated version of me, let them process it on their own, and enjoy the tiny shockwave my presence would create. Not out of spite, well, maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to reclaim space they'd always denied me. It would have worked perfectly if Madison hadn't found my LinkedIn. I'd updated my profile reluctantly, new job title, new headshot, new city, same work history. It wasn't flashy, just professional. I assumed none of them would look for me there. My parents barely understood Facebook, and Zach believed LinkedIn was just Facebook for people who pretend they read. But Madison, she actually used LinkedIn. She followed half her nursing school classmates, her colleagues, and even a few of Zach's business contacts. So one Tuesday afternoon, while I was eating lunch at my desk, my phone buzzed. Madison, text OMG Emma? Is this you? The message included a screenshot. My new photo, the one where my hair looked intentionally styled and my smile looked natural instead of apologetic. I froze. Not because I was embarrassed of the image. I loved the image. But because my quiet transformation was suddenly no longer mine alone. The domino I had been carefully saving for the wedding had toppled prematurely, and I could almost feel the ripple of it reaching my family before I was ready. My plan for a graceful, stunning re-entry into their world? Gone in one tap. What I didn't know at that moment was how far Madison would take it, and how badly the family would react when they realized the invisible sister had stopped playing her assigned role. Madison's message had barely settled in my inbox before the real storm hit. First came my mother. She called without even saying hello. Just launched straight into panic. Emma, what is going on with your hair? Not how are you, not we miss you, not congratulations on the promotion, no. Just my hair. Of course. What about it? I asked, already bracing myself. It's too light, she sighed, like I'd personally threatened the stability of the family. It draws attention, and Madison is the bride, sweetheart. You should tone it down a little. It distracts. Distracts from the bride, from their perfect daughter-in-law. I waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. Before I could respond, Dad's voice floated into the phone speaker. Maybe you could just dye it back to the old color? Just for the wedding. It would mean a lot. You know, for the family. The family. That magical word that always meant. Sacrifice yourself for Zach's spotlight. I stayed calm, but inside something tight and tired twisted. I'm not changing my hair, I said simply. Mom inhaled like I'd slapped her. Emma, don't be dramatic. It's just hair. But it wasn't just hair. It was finally mine. The next day, the trifecta completed itself. Zach called. His voice was dripping with that special brand of condescension only younger brothers who grow up worshipped by everyone around them can master. So, sis, he drawled, I saw your new little makeover. Little makeover. He made it sound like I'd scribbled eyeliner with crayons. I like it, I said. Thanks for noticing. Well, he laughed. A laugh that didn't reach his eyes even through the phone. You're not fooling anyone. You're still the same plain little Emma underneath. But seriously, don't embarrass yourself at the wedding. Embarrass myself? By existing with confidence? What exactly do you think I'm going to do? I asked. Oh, come on, he snapped. You know what I mean. Just don't try to draw attention. Don't stand out. Don't make it weird. Make it weird that I wasn't the family's decorative shadow anymore. Then came the list, an actual list delivered in a group call with Mom, Dad, and Zach like they were hosting an intervention. They wanted me to dye my hair back to brown, to not wear the dress I'd chosen, too fitted, too flattering. Tone down my makeup, no contouring, it's too noticeable. Sit in the back row for photos so I wouldn't stand near the bride. I listened quietly, letting them stack demand after demand like I was a problematic employee who needed corrective coaching. When they finished, Mom added gently, the way someone speaks to a child who refuses to share toys. It's not a punishment, dear. It's just better for everyone. Better for everyone. Meaning better for Zach's ego. I felt strangely calm when I answered. I'm not changing anything. Silence. Heavy, angry silence. Then Zach exploded. You just want to steal attention, he shouted. You're doing this on purpose. God, Emma, can't you go one day without making everything about you? About me? This from a man whose entire life was a spotlight, who had never shared a fraction of it with anyone unless forced. His reaction wasn't anger, it was fear. And in that moment, it crystallized for me with a clarity that almost made me smile. Zach was terrified. Terrified that I wasn't the plain older sister anymore. Terrified that I'd stopped being the backdrop that made him look brighter. Terrified that someone at his wedding might look at me and think, she's beautiful too. For a man who'd grown up believing that admiration was his birthright, my transformation was an earthquake. And the truth hit me like a clean, cold wave. He didn't want me invisible because I was unremarkable. He wanted me invisible because he finally realized that I wasn't. The strange thing about family conflict is that you never expect the truth to come from outside the family. But that's exactly what happened. In the middle of all the arguments, the calls, the demands, the guilt-tripping, I received a message from an unexpected person. Ryan, Zach's closest friend from college. We'd barely spoken in years. He was one of those people who floated around the edges of my childhood. Polite, funny, always kind, but still firmly in Zach's orbit. So when his name lit up my screen, I assumed it was a mistake. It wasn't. His message began simply, "Emma, I think you should know something." And with those words, everything I thought I understood about the last few months cracked open. We ended up talking on the phone. His voice low, hesitant, like he was carrying something heavy. "Emma, they've been talking about you for a long time," he said. "Not like family should." My pulse flickered. Talking how? He exhaled, like he hated every word he was about to say. "Madison's been calling you awkward and a threat to the wedding photos." Their words, not mine. "And Zach? Well, he's been worse." My jaw clenched. He continued, "He told our group that you need to look modest so the focus stays on the bride and groom. He even told relatives ahead of time not to compliment you if you show up looking, nice." He paused. "Honestly, it sounded like they're planning to drag you down preemptively." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. The idea wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. But Ryan wasn't finished. "And Madison said this at the engagement dinner," he added carefully. "I didn't want to repeat it, but you deserve to know. If Emma shows up looking too good, it'll be disrespectful to me." The words hit like a physical blow. Disrespectful? For existing? For not dimming myself? Ryan went quiet, as if giving me space to breathe. But I was already spiraling back through the last few weeks. My mother's voice, Zach's demands, the list of restrictions. It all snapped together into a pattern I'd tried too hard not to see. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't miscommunication. This was a coordinated effort. Campaign. An entire group of people, my own family and the woman marrying into it, determined to make me smaller, inferior, forgettable. Something hot and ugly twisted in my chest. But Ryan's next words stopped me cold. "Emma," he said gently, "Zach has always been jealous of you. He'd never admit it, but it's obvious to anyone who knows him." I laughed. A small, stunned sound. "Jealous? Of what?" "Come on," he said. "You were always the smarter one, the responsible one. You worked your way up on your own." Meanwhile, Zach got praise for breathing in the right direction. He's used to being the star. And you showing up confident. That threatens him in ways he doesn't know how to handle. It felt surreal hearing it said aloud. Something I'd always sensed but never allowed myself to articulate. Ryan added quietly, "He used to rant about how your achievements made him look bad. I don't think he ever forgave you for growing up into someone he can't control." A chill crawled across my skin. Because all of this wasn't about hair or makeup or dresses or wedding photos. It wasn't even about Madison. It was about Zach losing the one thing he had always relied on. Me being less visible, less confident, less admired. I realized in that moment that my brother didn't want a wedding where he shined. He wanted a wedding where I didn't. And Madison, for all her sweetness on the surface, had absorbed that insecurity like gospel. They weren't just discouraging me. They were actively preparing the battlefield, warming up relatives to ignore me, setting expectations that I shouldn't draw attention, painting me as some kind of deliberate threat, framing any confidence as narcissism. They weren't afraid of me embarrassing myself. They were afraid I might embarrass them, simply by not being invisible. Ryan hesitated before his final confession. I wasn't going to get involved, he admitted. But the way they talk, it's ugly, Emma. And it's wrong. You deserve to know. You deserve better. His voice softened. And honestly, you look great. You deserve to show up feeling good about yourself. I thanked him, though the word felt too small. He'd handed me the missing puzzle piece. Proof that everything I'd sensed was real, not paranoia. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Not sad, not even angry, just clear. Everything that had been murky and tangled now snapped into focus. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. This was a boundary-breaking, confidence-shredding pattern stretching back years. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for noticing. I felt ready, because now that I understood exactly what and who I was dealing with, the next move would be mine. I didn't plan the confrontation. I didn't rehearse a speech. I didn't stand in front of the mirror practicing calm expressions or dignified pauses. I simply realized that if I didn't confront him now, if I kept letting this rot under the surface, I would be agreeing to the role they'd written for me since childhood. And I was done being a background character in my own life. So I called Zach. The phone rang only once. What? He barked, already irritated, as if my existence were an inconvenience. I didn't soften my voice. I didn't swallow the truth. I asked the question directly, the one that had been burning a hole in my chest ever since Ryan's call. Zach, did you really talk about me behind my back for months? Did you really plan with Madison and your friends to make me look worse at your wedding? Silence, sharp, startled, defensive. Then something snapped. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He exploded. And what if I did? He shouted. You think I want people looking at you instead of us? You think I want someone comparing us and saying you look better? It's my wedding, Emma. Mine. I don't want anyone thinking you outshine me. There it was. The truth, naked and pathetic. Not dressed up as family unity. Not disguised as concern for Madison. Not wrapped in fake politeness or subtle guilt trips. Just raw, childish jealousy. The same jealousy that had simmered since we were teenagers. The same jealousy that had slithered under every joke, every forced belittlement, every time our parents brushed me aside and polished his ego. He needed me small. He needed me dull. He needed me to stay the quiet, invisible older sister who made him look brighter by contrast. Without that dynamic, his entire identity cracked. And I finally saw it. Jealousy wasn't just a trait he had. It was the foundation he lived on. I breathed in slowly, letting the truth settle in my bones. For the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was free. Zach, I said evenly, your insecurity isn't my responsibility. You wanted me to look worse because you can't handle the idea that I might shine. That's not my problem. That's your complex. He didn't respond. For a moment, I thought the call dropped. But no. He was just silent, stunned, stripped of the excuses he'd been hiding behind since childhood. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't angry anymore. It was brittle. Then don't come, he said. If you're going to ruin things just by being there, don't come. There it was. The final act. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I didn't ask him to reconsider or tell him he was being cruel. I just answered with a calmness that surprised even me. Perfect. My life is too big to squeeze into your tiny little stage. A sharp inhale from him, half outrage, half disbelief. But I was already done. I won't be there, Zach, I added. And that's your loss, not mine. Then I hung up. No dramatic music. No trembling hands. No pang of guilt. Just a clean, quiet ending. The kind you get when a chapter is already dead and someone finally says it out loud. I didn't go to the wedding. I spent that day walking along the lakeshore in Austin with my phone on silent, wearing the dress I'd chosen for the ceremony, the one they tried to forbid, and letting sunlight warm my shoulders. I wasn't thinking about the empty chair with my name. I wasn't imagining the fake sympathy remarks from relatives. I wasn't picturing Zach scanning the crowd, looking for the sister he'd spent years trying to shrink. I was thinking about how peaceful it felt to remove myself from a place I was never welcome as myself. The freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and absolutely deserved. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt untouchable. I didn't attend the wedding, but my absence did. It moved through the venue like a cold draft no one could ignore. People felt it before they understood it. That subtle sensation that something was off, someone was missing, and no one wanted to be the first to say it aloud. But in every family, there is always one person who will. In ours, that was Aunt Joan. According to the texts I received afterward, she noticed immediately that my seat at the ceremony was empty. She asked my mother quietly where I was, and when Mom gave a vague, forced smile and murmured, "Emma just wasn't feeling up to attending," Joan didn't buy it for a second. She cornered my parents during the reception, and when she cornered people, it was never silent. One cousin wrote to me later, "Emma, your aunt absolutely shredded your parents. At the gift table. Loudly." Another relative summarized it even more bluntly. "I've never seen two people look smaller than your parents did when she started yelling." Apparently Joan demanded to know why the kindest girl in the family wasn't invited, and when she found out the real reason, that I had been pushed out because my hair was too bright, my dress too flattering, my presence too threatening, she erupted. She told them they were cruel, shallow, pathetic, and she told Zach, loud enough that the bartender heard her, that if the bride was threatened by the groom's sister, the marriage was doomed before it started. It didn't get better from there. Madison cracked first. She confronted Zach during their own reception, hissing that he had embarrassed her in front of her entire family, and that my absence made her look bad. Not the missing seat, not the ugly truth behind it, not the cruelty of the demands they made. No, her appearance. Because Madison lived in a world where the only real tragedy was an imperfect wedding album. Guests whispered. Relatives exchanged looks. The atmosphere shifted, not dramatically, just enough for the evening to feel brittle instead of joyful. After the honeymoon, everything Madison had tried to hide resurfaced like something rotten beneath clear water. She began stalking my social media. Every time I posted a picture of a hike, a new outfit, a restaurant outing, she'd screenshot it and send it to Zach with passive-aggressive notes like, "She's doing this to mock me. Tell your sister to stop trying to provoke drama. She's obsessed with attention." Tension. From living my life. The irony was almost funny. But Zach wasn't laughing. He was exhausted. Madison kept picking fights about me, even though I hadn't spoken to either of them since the confrontation. She accused him of not protecting her, of letting me win, of not controlling the narrative. Zach wasn't used to being the villain. He wasn't used to consequences. He wasn't used to looking in a mirror and not liking the man staring back. So they fought, and fought, and fought. 2 months after the wedding, 8 weeks, 56 days, barely long enough to unpack gifts, they separated. When Zach finally called me, his voice was stripped of the arrogance, the mockery, the practiced confidence. It was the voice of someone who had been humbled by his own reflection. "I ruined everything," he said quietly. "You were right. I've always needed you to be the quiet one, the small one, the easy one. And when you stopped, it scared me. I didn't soften. His pain wasn't mine to hold anymore." "I'm not small, Zach," I said. "Not anymore. And I'm not your backdrop." He exhaled, a sound halfway between grief and acceptance. "I know." There was a long silence. Not angry, not hopeful, just honest. Maybe for the first time in our lives. We didn't reconcile that day. We didn't magically heal decades of imbalance in a 5-minute phone call. But something shifted, the part where I had always carried guilt simply because he couldn't carry humility. Now he would have to. As for me, my life began to widen the moment I stepped out of his shadow. The friendships I built were real. My confidence stopped feeling like rebellion. My achievements stopped feeling like burdens. My reflection finally matched the version of myself I had always tried to grow into. And for the first time, I felt like the main character of my own story, not the supporting cast for someone else's. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped dimming myself for the comfort of people who never clapped unless Zach was on stage. I stopped shrinking. And most important, I walked away from anyone who only loved the minimized version of me. Because I finally understood something my family never taught me. Something I had to painfully learn alone. You can love people deeply and still choose yourself. You can forgive someone and still never let them close again. You can outgrow a childhood role and refuse to play it as an adult. My family built a world where I needed to be invisible for Zach to shine. So I left that world behind. And I never went back.